Sup, cousin? Welcome to CoCo Conjure. Here we talk about all things hoodoo, folklore, and spiritual journeys. My goal is to provide foundation to the novice and inspiration to the advanced practitioner. If you haven't guessed already, my name is CoCo. Before we get to the main event of this episode, I just want to take a moment to tell you, cousin, you're awesome. Thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for leaving the 5-star review. I appreciate you coming back again and again, or just clicking on my podcast for the first time. Many thanks. Much love. All right, cousin, let's talk Dr. Buzzard. And I don't want to give you a biography. I don't want to do that. I want to tell you a story, right? I like to tell stories. So I'm going to tell you about the time that the High Sheriff of Low Country, South Carolina, went toe-to-toe with Dr. Buzzard. Okay, first we got to set the stage. We have to know our characters. So Dr. Buzzard, this nom de plume, is easily the most well-known amongst the OG hoodoo practitioners, up there with Gullah Jack and Marie Laveau, right? And honestly, the name evokes more myth than fact sometimes, carrying a reputation that so far precedes it that even those not of hoodoo know the name and can give a small story or tale. What folks don't know is that, like superheroes Robin or Captain America, the mantle of Dr. Buzzard has been taken up by many people over time, starting as far back as slavery. The most famous Dr. Buzzard is Stephanie Robinson, who operated as a hoodoo doctor working out of Low Country, South Carolina in the early 1900s. The date of his birth is disputed, but what is known is that he was a conjure man toward the end of chattel slavery here in the United States till the beginning of World War I. I know it doesn't sound like those things happen so close together, but the 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution was ratified on December 6th, 1865, and the First World War started on July 28th, 1914. That's a 49-year gap. To put that into context, my grandmother, that's Mother Clark, will be 89 years old by the end of this year. So that's half her lifetime, right? 49 years. Y'all, time is weird. So what does this say about Dr. Buzzard? Well, it says that he's an old school plantation style conjure man. Plantation style. What do I mean? I mean his conjure was black people magic and as pure a form as you can get on this side of the Atlantic before influence. In her book, Mojo Workin, Katrina Hazzard-Donald writes, his conjure was free of exotic influences. He used only non-commercial products. He was a living link with the old plantation hoodoo folk religion, and his life spanned hoodoo's development through several of its rapidly changing stages. Even further, according to Sheriff J.E. Mc.Teer, Stephanie Robinson was a conjure man by legacy. And if he's a legacy during the time of plantation-style hoodoo, that means that he learned conjure from an African conjure man who learned his conjure from an even older African conjure man. In his book, 50 Years, A Low Country Witch Doctor, a book that I will be speaking from extensively in this podcast, Mc.Teer writes a bit about Stephanie Robinson's father. He says, his father was a witch doctor shipped here as a slave. He had no sooner landed than he let his power be known. Among his subjects, fresh from the African jungle, his word was law. The rice planters soon realized that he would never submit to slavery, so they gave him a great latitude of freedom, and he in turn tolerated them. Now, it's understood that Mc.Teer was giving a guess at Robinson's age, so it's quite possible that the African conjure man that Mc.Teer described was Robinson's grandfather, not his father. I should take the time to note that, according to my research, the name Dr. Buzzard was passed down in Robinson's lineage for a while. It seems Robinson's father, son-in-law, and great-grandson were also known as Dr. Buzzard. So I guess we can we can estimate or give a guess that his grandfather was probably the first Dr. Buzzard. That would make Robinson the second or third Dr. Buzzard and the third conjure man in his family that we can trace. So our Dr. Buzzard was known as an all-around doctor. If you had a curse, he could cure it. If you had an illness, he had a tonic. If you wanted somebody put down, he'd make sure they die. And if you had a court charge you needed to turn in your favor, Dr. Buzzard had a route. In her book, Mojo Workin, Hazzard-Donald writes, when a client contracted his services, he would don his famous blue-purple tinted glasses and sit in the courtroom chewing the galanga root and spitting whenever and wherever possible. Known as Chewing John, Low John, or Little John, the galanga, a member of the ginger family, was also used in other situations requiring neutralization and control. The practice of releasing the magical power in the root of sacred plants by mastation is common in West and Central West Africa and was passed on to the African American hoodoo practitioners by their parents. In more difficult court cases, Robinson would have dressed the courtroom ahead of time, sometimes paying and sending in the unnoticeable Negro janitor to deposit the root or powder. Robinson directly and fearlessly confronted the white man's world's representation by the power of the courtroom. This was something few African Americans could or would do. This is what made our Dr. Buzzard famous. This is what keeps his legend and myth alive long after his death and long after others take up his mantle. He dared to do what others only imagined they could, and he seemingly had the power and knowledge to win out. That, mixed with the pedigree of conjure straight from the motherland, Dr. Buzzard seemed unstoppable and unmatched by his contemporaries. Well, that is until the high sheriff of Low Country decided to clean up the mean conjure streets. All right, so here enters our second player, J.E. Mc.Teer, a white man with a pedigree of his own. His grandmama was a witch. Okay, I'm being heavy-handed. In his book, 50 Years as a Low Country Witch Doctor, he doesn't outright call his grandmother a witch, but it's very heavily implied. He says, my grandmother, Louisa Guard Hayward, was the wife of William N. Hayward, a rice planter. On their plantation, she had seen the blacks fresh from Africa employing their hexes and spells, being a keen observer. She also saw the enormous power that the black African witch doctor had over the slaves he was in contact with. She was also a strong believer in extrasensory perception and in reincarnation. It was very easy for her to believe that the African witch doctor knew secrets that the white man scoffed at. No overseer or owner of a rice plantation could make a slave refuse his witch doctor's command. So, my grandmother, with her sensitivity to astral forces, delved deeper into the mysteries of the occult. So yeah, Mc.Teer's grandmama was a witch. She was a witch. And not just any kind of witch. She was a witch heavily influenced by that of black conjure. She was not of our culture, but she was in proximity. And apparently his grandmother's talents were passed to his mother. And eventually Mc.Teer becomes a witch doctor himself. His words, witch doctor, not mine, taking on clients all over the country, right? This is not an odd phenomena. A couple episodes ago, I told you about Frederick Douglass's overseer, Mr. Covey. Mr. Covey was also known to dabble into the dark arts, and he too, being an overseer, was in proximity to black conjure. Okay, but different from Covey, Mc.Teer was more than a witch. Yeah, more important than the magic in his veins was his blue blood. Mc.Teer was the sheriff of Beaufort County, just like his daddy before him. And as a high sheriff with lineage, the people of Beaufort County came to him with all their issues and concerns. And even though he respected his grandma's magic and the origin that magic came from, he knew that certain root doctor practices were going to have to stop if he was going to keep the people of his county safe and whole. In his book, Mc.Teer writes, With this responsibility resting heavily on my shoulders, I knew that certain practices in the world of hexes would have to stop. A true witch doctor casts his spells and invokes the astral forces to do his bidding. He does not administer medicine. But I knew that some of the doctors looking for a quick dollar would give roots for anything, including syphilis, gonorrhea, smallpox, and so on. This I would try to end. With my background in witchcraft, I knew that stopping the tides would probably be easier than eradicating thousands of years of belief in the power of witchcraft. I had no intention of attacking the belief in witchcraft. I believe then, as I do now, that there is a definite need in people's lives who believe in the supernatural, that there be someone for them to turn when their troubles beset them, that they have no explanation for. So, do we need a spiritual doctor? Yes, most certainly. But should we pass out pseudoscience cures? No. I think all of us would say no to that. Now, I am not talking about grandma remedies, okay? Grandma remedies, what do I mean? Got an upset stomach? Drink a teaspoon of baking soda and water. Got a bug bite? A really bad bug bite. Mix aloe and tea tree, rub yourself down. Is your throat sore and your nose stuffed? Make ginger root tea and add some honey. Hell, let me tell y'all, when I caught chickenpox as a child while I was visiting my grandmother down south, she dunked me in an oatmeal bath, slathered me in calamine lotion, tied socks to my hands so I would not scratch, and rolled me up like a burrito in damn near 90 degrees southern heat so I could sweat it out. I was tip top 3 days later. And if I remember correctly, not once did she take me to the doctor. So, these grandma remedies, these home grandma remedies are harmless and helpful, right? Like, if it doesn't work, you go to a doctor, but it's not going to kill you and it's not going to kill someone else, right? No, the stuff that Mc.Teer is talking about, it's the big stuff. The big stuff you should probably see a medical professional for, like gonorrhea, syphilis, HIV. You know what? Zora Hurston wrote about a cure for gonorrhea. Hold on. She wrote about a cure for gonorrhea. It's in one of these books. Let's see. Okay, yeah. This is what she said. She said that when she was in New Orleans, Zora Hurston, when she was in New Orleans and she was learning under different hoodoo doctors and hoodoo practitioners, she said that they told her these cures for gonorrhea. 1, 50 cents of iodide potash and 2 quarters of water, boiled down to 1 quart. Add 2 teaspoons of Epsom salt. Take a big swallow 3 times a day. Another one that she picked up was 50 cents of iodide potash to 1 quart sarsaparilla. Sarsaparilla is what they put in root beer. And then take 3 teaspoons 3 times a day in water. Child. Okay, hold on. If I flip the page. Yeah, here's one for syphilis. It says, ashes of 1 good cigar, 15 cents worth of blue ointment, mix and put on the sores. That's for syphilis. Cousin, what does turpentine and some sarsaparilla? Just no. The answer is no. Listen, I get why black folks went to the hoodoo doctor, the root worker, right, to get cures. It's because black folks didn't, and to be honest with you, still don't trust white doctors. And there is documented torture and experimentation as to why that is. But Epsom salt ain't going to cure gonorrhea, okay? It's not going to cure your gonorrhea. And it's a public health issue if you let a syphilitic person run these streets after you give them 50 cents worth of cigar ash. Shit. It was bad enough that people, child, please tell me y'all remember this. People were giving themselves bleach enemas and dying from taking fish tank cleaner because President number 45 just said whatever came to his mind during COVID briefings. Can you imagine what the world would look like if major medical concerns were left in the hands of the unqualified? So, does Mc.Teer have a point? Sure. Yes, I can see it. And to make his point and to put an end to medical doctoring without a license, he sets his sights on Dr. Buzzard. Mc.Teer's plan of action: if you take out the biggest guy in the jail yard, the rest will come to heel. Okay, back to the story. According to Mc.Teer, no sooner than he had told his deputies the plan, word had gotten out to Buzzard. Before, Dr. Buzzard's clients would squawk like hens, tell anyone and everyone who would listen just how great Dr. Buzzard and his cures were. Now, though, before Mc.Teer could even, quote, find a victim, right, the streets were just quiet. Just no one was talking. And just to make sure he flew under the radar, Dr. Buzzard wouldn't even cash checks. He wouldn't even cash the checks that were coming into the mail. In his book, 50 Years as a Low Country Witch Doctor, Mc.Teer writes the following. He says, "We heard of another instance that confirmed our belief in how wary the doctor was growing. He drove up the post office in Frogmore and went to the window. In his hand, he had a stack of U.S. postal money orders payable to him. He had received these through the mail from people wanting him to give them lucky numbers or to remove a hex. 'Cash these,' he said to the postmaster. 'All right, doctor, just sign them, Dr. Buzzard by Stephanie Robinson.' Buzzard says, 'You won't cash them unless I put my name on them?' 'That's right,' the postmaster said. 'Just sign and I'll give you the money.' Now, the doctor is truly scared of all law enforcement agencies, including the federal government. He sensed a trap. 'Give them back to me,' he said. With that, he took the money orders and tore them to tiny pieces and walked out." Dr. Buzzard wasn't about to get caught up, and he figured any white man with a uniform was not going to get the upper hand. Side tangent. So apparently the money orders that Dr. Buzzard ripped up totaled over $1,500. So let's say that happened when Mc.Teer became sheriff in 1926. If we count in for inflation, that $1,500 for Dr. Buzzard would feel like $26,677.63 to us. Cousin, that's discipline on Buzzard's part, because your girl would have driven to North Carolina, Georgia, Maryland, California, wherever I had to go to cash the money orders. Ain't no way I'm giving up 26 and a half G's. Shit. Even if it was dollar to dollar, say there was no inflation, it's dollar to dollar. $1,500 would cover my rent and at least 2 bills. I'm not giving that up. But yeah, Buzzard did not fall for the trap. Mc.Teer did get the upper hand eventually, though, when his deputies arrested a man for B&E. All right, here we go. In the robber's waistband, he had a mojo. With the sheriff's knowledge of the occult and his obsession with shutting down Dr. Buzzard, he knew by the look of the mojo that it was prepared by Buzzard himself. The dude, the robber, was freaked out when the mojo was discovered. Dr. Buzzard told him that if anyone saw it, the mojo would turn on him, cross him up, kill him, the whole deal. In the robber's fear, Sheriff Mc.Teer saw opportunity. So he opens up the mojo and he finds a little bottle of liquid. Sheriff Mc.Teer writes, "I said to the suspect, 'We've got your root and you're not dead. We know Buzzard gave it to you, so you could not be arrested. Well, I'm a witch doctor too, and I can kill any charm of Buzzard's.' 'Yes, sir,' he replied. 'I know you practice witchcraft. Now, this medicine that Buzzard gave you to take, what did he say to do?' 'Oh man, he said I had something evil in my body and that this would kill it. I got to take a teaspoonful every night before I go to bed. So Mc.Teer says, you see that you're arrested and that my power is stronger than Buzzard's. Now, will you testify against him if I bring him before you? The robber then says, yes, sir, I believe you. I'll tell him to his face that his roots and medicine don't work against yours. Ooh, cousin, it's heating up now. So Sheriff Mc.Teer sends his deputies to scoop up Dr. Buzzard. And when Buzzard showed up, he had on full regalia, including his purple glasses. The deputies usher him in to face his, quote, victim and see the evidence against him. And without explanation, Buzzard knew why he was there. So the doctor sat down across from the would-be robber and the sheriff, and he fixed the robber, his client, mind you, with a stare. That's it. He just stared at him. Face stone still, purple glasses on his eyes, not a word spoken. He just stares at the man. And no sooner than his eyes were fixed on him did the man start to groan and fall to the ground in fits like he was covered in red fire ants. Eventually, the fits turn into a full seizure and the man's eyes roll back and his mouth starts to foam at the corners. Man, the sheriff and his deputies start to panic. They brought this man in for a B&E. They wanted him to they wanted to save him from Dr. Buzzard's malpractice, right? Now he was about to die on the floor because the witch man sheriff went after the OG Conjure man. Not good. According to Sheriff Mc.Teer, once this went on for a bit, Dr. Buzzard says, as calmly as ever, he says, "Are you through with me?" And Sheriff Mc.Teer responds, "Yes, for the time, but if you give your customers medicine to take, I'll find one, and I hope you can't put a spell on them." To which Dr. Buzzard replied, "You do your job, and I'll do mine." Then he left the station as coolly as he had walked in. Now, the sheriff and Dr. Buzzard, right, they run into each other again and again. In one court case, Buzzard was seen sitting among the spectators, chewing root, purple glasses on his face. And after everyone had come back from recess, the judge found a fine powder all over his desk. This is classic Buzzard, right? The sheriff gives Buzzard a warning. He writes, "I said, Dr. Buzzard, I know you put the powder out during recess. Now, I should take you before the judge, but I'm going to be fair and let you off this time. Chew your root, but no more powder, you understand?" To which Buzzard replied, "I hear you." Yo, Buzzard was cool as a cucumber. Now, these run-ins got Buzzard hot, right? And word on the street was that Dr. Buzzard had enough of Mc.Teer and he was going to bring him down hard. That had everybody talking, and an informant of the sheriff let him know that Buzzard's intentions were not too good. The sheriff told the informant that he was a witch himself and he knew the game pretty well, and that at this point it was only a matter of who was stronger, who was better, the sheriff or Buzzard. In his book, Mc.Teer told the informant, he says, "Tell Buzzard that trouble is close to him. I don't like to be threatened." Oof. Now, I don't know if Mc.Teer was a person who was heard by spirits, or maybe bad juju had just caught up with Buzzard and his family. Hell, it could just all be a coincidence, really, just life being life. But not too soon after Sheriff Mc.Teer issued that warning, and that warning spread through the streets of Low Country, Dr. Buzzard's son ran his car off a causeway bridge during a rainstorm and drowned. Not too soon after that, Sheriff Mc.Teer came home one afternoon to find Dr. Buzzard waiting for him. Buzzard gets out of his car to greet Sheriff Mc.Teer and hand him 2 chickens as a peace offering. "Let's be friends," Buzzard expressed to him while he was handing over these chickens. "I've got powers and so have you, I can tell. I won't give out any more medicine. I'll just deal with the spirits. Buzzard concedes. To which Sheriff Mc.Teer says, that suits me, doctor, and I tell you I'm giving up black witchcraft. All I want to do from now on is help afflicted people. Basically, the sheriff is taking credit for the death of Buzzard's son via conjure, right? To which Buzzard says, I'll teach you a lot of things I learned from my father. Your work won't interfere with mine. I know you've been taught some, but I'm getting old and I want you to know what my father taught me. Then you can do good for people. But as for me, the big money is in black witchcraft, putting hexes on people. So I'll do both. Put them on and take them off. You can just take them off. If you can. Sheriff Mc.Teer goes on to write, as soon as we joined forces, Dr. Buzzard taught me many things. When his acceptance of me as a witch doctor became known, my prestige in his exclusive society was magnified many times. To the best of my knowledge, Dr. Buzzard kept his word and no longer gave medicine. Now, I don't know if Dr. Buzzard actually taught Mc.Teer what he knew. Only Mc.Teer claims that, but I do know that Mc.Teer did go on to do spiritual work for others all over the country, even after he stepped down as the sheriff of Low Country. For Mc.Teer, it was more about easing people's mind and spirit. At least, that's what he claimed. But Dr. Buzzard is said to have died in 1947. Well, I guess I should say Stephanie Robinson, the man known as Dr. Buzzard from the end of slavery to the World Wars, died in 1947. As I said before, others came after him to take on that moniker. But I'd venture to say that none were as famous or as formidable. So that's a wild story, right? Wild. I was on a cruise with my best friend, and during my downtime, I was reading J.E. Mc.Teer's book, 50 Years a Low Country Witch Doctor. And the whole time I was like, yo, this man is built different. Like he was just, it was weird. The whole thing was just so strange to read. He was very honest. I will give him that. He was very honest about where his family magic originated. And he was honest that he didn't necessarily believe in the juju, right? But he understand that it could be used as a tool to help the people that did believe in it. And I did know about this battle between him and Dr. Buzzard. I read it in Mojo Workin by Katrina Hazzard-Donald way before I picked up J.E. Mc.Teer's book. As a matter of fact, that's the reason why I picked up the book. But nothing could have prepared me for Mc.Teer's POV of the story. Like nothing. My biggest takeaway, well, I have a few. First, there's always someone more talented and more spiritually inclined than you. Always. And second, because of that first fact, you have to be ready and willing to humble yourself on occasion. I was crossed up recently and I sat down with one of my guiding spirits and pulled some cards to get a beat on the situation. And when I asked if I should return the cross, right? Or if I should just uncross and protect myself and, build up my strength and move on. I pulled the strength card from the tarot. So some might read that to mean I'm stronger than my opponent and I should return it. Right. But I don't know, my knowing, that feeling that tickles in the back of your brain, that knowing interpreted the card to mean, girl, you do not want that smoke. Right? Was I humbled? Yes, but sometimes we need to be. We need to be humbled. Mc.Teer thought he could just wave his badge and lay down the law. That is until Dr. Buzzard gave that robber guy fits. And Buzzard just knew he was untouchable. That is until his son died. No matter how strong we are, no matter how gifted we are, there's always someone out there who is stronger and more talented. I think that's my biggest takeaway. Okay, so no question for today. This was a long one, so we'll comb the internet next time. This was a pretty long one. If you would like to learn more about Dr. Buzzard, or check out the sources I used during my retelling, please check out the show notes. Again, I mostly referenced J.E. Mc.Teer's book, 50 Years as a Low Country Witch Doctor. It's wild. It's strange. She's got like actual court case documentation in there, which I do plan on reading to you guys in a later episode. He's got letters that people sent to him. He talks about like what he thinks hoodoo is. Again, he doesn't call it hoodoo. He says the black African, the African jungle, the witch doctor. Like his language is that of someone of his time. There is definitely an undercurrent of racism involved. But he's, like I said, he's a product of his time. It's an interesting read. There's a lot to take in. Definitely worth gleaning for some knowledge if you just want to pick up something to learn a little bit about what it was like back then. I definitely will say that I don't take Mc.Teer at face value sometimes. I just don't, because it's his POV, and sometimes we inflate ourselves. Remember, I was talking about being humble. We inflate ourselves sometimes when we tell stories about ourselves. So his POVs might not be worth its salt, and he's remembering things way after the fact. So you don't know if that's exactly what the person said. But if you just want to go in for that wild ride and you want to hear a little bit about what it was like from a first person perspective, then this is definitely your shot. To do so, just like Zora Neale Hurston. Well, I trust Zora Neale Hurston a little bit more than Mc.Teer. And what I think is so sad is that I've looked, and if I'm wrong, someone please correct me, but I have not seen like anything written by Buzzard. Like he didn't write anything down. There's nothing to this Buzzard. Stephanie Robinson Buzzard. There's nothing there, which makes sense. Again, because he would be a product of his time, and maybe the whole writing things down was just not his jam, right? It just wasn't the thing he did. But I really wish I would have gotten Buzzard's perspective, and we can put the two side by side so we could really see what went down. My father, when I was very young, my father told me, when it comes to disputes, there's always three sides to the story: your side, my side, and the truth. Right? Like always three sides. So it would have been nice to be able to compare them. But for now, we just have J.E. Mc.Teer's point of view. If you're listening to this and you're like, girl, CoCo, just go pick up this book or go listen to this biography, and so I can get the other point of view from like Buzzard's point of view, please leave a comment, leave me an email, something, so I can go and read it, because the story is wild and I would love to know all sides. Before we get out of here, cousin, I just want to let you know that you deserve the world. We do get humbled from time to time, and you know what? That's a good thing. Our egos must deflate if we intend to continue to grow. And we must grow if we want to thrive, not just survive, right? And don't forget that if you call for your blessings, cousin, they will come to you. I'll see you guys next time.